The Powhatan are a Native American people in Virginia. It may also refer to the leader of those tribes, commonly referred to as Powhatan. It is estimated that there were about 14,000–21,000 Powhatan people in eastern Virginia when the English settled Jamestown in 1607. They were also known as Virginia Algonquins, as they spoke an Eastern Algonquin language known as Powhatan or Virginia Algonquin. In the late 16th and early 17th centuries, a Mamanatowik named Wehunsunakoff created a powerful organization by affiliating 30 tributary peoples, whose territory was much of eastern Virginia. They called this area Zernacomacca. Wehunsunakoff came to be known by the English as Powhatan. Each of the tribes within this organization had its own Wairowans, but all paid tribute to Powhatan. After Powhatan's death in 1618, hostilities with colonists escalated under the chiefdom of his brother, Apishon, who sought in vain to drive off the encroaching English. His large-scale attacks in 1622 and 1644 met strong reprisals by the English, resulting in the near elimination of the tribe. By 1646, what is called the Powhatan Paramount Chiefdom by modern historians had been decimated. More important than the ongoing conflicts with the English settlements was the high rate of deaths the Powhatan suffered due to new infectious diseases carried to North America by Europeans, such as measles and smallpox. The Native Americans did not have any immunity to these, which had been endemic in Europe and Asia for centuries. The wholesale deaths greatly weakened and hollowed out the Native American societies. By the mid-17th century, the leaders of the colony were desperate for labor to develop the land. Almost half of the English and European immigrants arrived as indentured servants. As settlement continued, the colonists imported growing numbers of enslaved Africans for labor. By 1700, the colonies had about 6,000 black slaves, 1/12 of the population. It was common for black slaves to escape and join the surrounding Powhatan. Some white servants were also noted to have joined the Indians. Africans and whites worked and lived together. Some natives also intermarried with them. After Bacon's rebellion in 1676, the colony enslaved Indians for control. In 1691, the House of Burgesses abolished Indian slavery. However, many Powhatan were held in servitude well into the 18th century. In the 21st century, 8 Indian tribes are officially recognized by Virginia as having ancestral ties to the Powhatan Confederation. The Pamunkey and Mattapona are the only 2 peoples who have retained reservation lands from the 17th century. The Powhatan Lenape Nation has been recognized by the state of New Jersey. The competing cultures of the Powhatan and English settlers were united through unions and marriages of members, of which the most well-known was that of Pocahontas and John Rolfe. Their son Thomas Rolfe was the ancestor of many Virginians. Many of the first families of Virginia have both English and Virginia Indian ancestry. Naming and terminology. The name Powhatan is the name of the native village or town of Wehunsunakoff. The title Chief or King Powhatan, used by the English, is believed to have been derived from the name of this site, although the specific site of his home village is unknown. In modern times, the Powhatan Hill neighborhood in the East End portion of the modern-day city of Richmond, Virginia, is thought by many to be in the general vicinity of the original village. Tree Hill Farm, which is situated in nearby Henrico County a short distance to the east, is also considered as the possible site. Powhatan was also the name used by the natives to refer to the river where the town sat at the head of navigation. The English colonists chose to name it for their own leader, King James I. The English colonists named many features in the early years of the Virginia colony in honor of the king, as well as for his 3 children, Elizabeth, Henry, and Charles. Although portions of Virginia's longest river upstream from Columbia were much later named for Queen Anne of Great Britain, in modern times, It is called the James River. It forms at the confluence of the Jackson and Cowpasture rivers near the present-day town of Clifton Forge, flowing east to Hampton Roads. Powhatan County and its county seat at Powhatan, Virginia were honorific names established years later, in locations west of the area populated by the Powhatan peoples. The county was formed in May 1777. History. Complex chiefdom. Various tribes each held some individual powers locally, and each had a chief known as a Wayrowance or, more rarely, a Werowansqua, meaning commander. As early as the era of John Smith, the individual tribes of this grouping were clearly recognized by the English as falling under the greater authority of the centralized power led by the chiefdom of Powhatan, whose proper name was Wahunsonacof or Wahunsonacock. At the time of the 1607 English settlement at Jamestown, he ruled primarily from Werowocomoco, which was located on the northern shore of the York River. This site of Werowocomoco was rediscovered in the early 21st century. It was central to the tribes of the Confederacy. The improvements discovered at the site during archaeological research have confirmed that Powhatan had a paramount chiefdom over the other tribes in the power hierarchy. Anthropologist Robert L. Carnero in his The Chiefdom, Precursor of the State, The Transition to Statehood in the New World, deeply explores the political structure of the chiefdom and confederacy. Powhatan ruled what is called a complex chiefdom, referred to by scholars as the Powhatan Paramount Chiefdom. Research work continues at Werowocomoco and elsewhere that deepens understanding of the Powhatan world. Powhatan builds his chiefdom. Wahunsonacof had inherited control over 6 tribes, but dominated more than 30 by 1607, when the English settlers established their Virginia colony at Jamestown. The original 6 tribes under Wahunsonacock were the Powhatan, the Aroostook, the Appomattox, the Pamunkey, the Mattapona, and the Chiskeak. He added the Kecoughtan to his fold by 1598. Some other affiliated groups included the Yortanand, Rappahannocks, Moroticand, Weyanoke, Paspahegh, Quiyuf, Kohanik, Warraskoyak, and Nansemond. Another closely related tribe of the same language group was the Chickahominy, but they managed to preserve their autonomy from the Powhatan Paramount Chiefdom. The Accomaca, located on the eastern shore across the Chesapeake Bay, were nominally tributary to the Powhatan Chiefdom, but enjoyed autonomy under their own paramount chief or emperor, Debedevan. In his notes on the state of Virginia, Thomas Jefferson estimated that the Powhatan Confederacy occupied about 8,000 square miles of territory, with a population of about 8,000 people, of whom 2,400 were warriors. Later scholars estimated the total population of the Paramountcy as 15,000. English settlers in the land of the Powhatan. The Powhatan Confederacy was where the English made their first permanent settlement in North America. Conflicts began immediately between the Powhatan people and the English. The English colonists fired shots as soon as they arrived. Within 2 weeks of the English arrival at Jamestown, deaths had occurred. The settlers had hoped for friendly relations and had planned to trade with the Virginia Indians for food. Captain Christopher Newport led the first English exploration party up the James River in 1607, when he met Powhatan, Wayrowance of the Powhatan proper. The English initially mistook him for the paramount Powhatan, his father Wahunsonacof, who ruled the Confederacy. On a hunting and trade mission on the Chickahominy River in December 1607, Captain John Smith, later president of the colony, was captured by a Pishon Senor, the younger brother of Wahunsonacof. Smith became the first Englishman to meet the paramount chief Powhatan. According to Smith's account, Pocahontas, the Powhatan's daughter, prevented her father from executing Smith. Some researchers have asserted that a mock execution of Smith was a ritual intended to adopt Smith into the tribe, but other modern writers dispute this interpretation. They point out that nothing is known of 17th-century Powhatan adoption ceremonies. They note that an execution ritual is different from known rites of passage. Other historians, such as Helen Rountree, have questioned whether there was any risk of execution. They note that Smith failed to mention it in his 1608 and 1612 accounts, and only added it to his 1624 memoir, after Pocahontas had become famous. In 1608, Captain Newport realized that Powhatan's friendship was crucial to the survival of the small Jamestown colony. In the summer of that year, he tried to crown the paramount chief with a ceremonial crown to make him an English vassal. They also gave Powhatan many European gifts, such as a pitcher, feather mattress, bed frame, and clothes. The coronation went badly because they asked Powhatan to kneel to receive the crown, which he refused to do. As a powerful leader, Powhatan followed two rules. He who keeps his head higher than others ranks higher, and he who puts other people in a vulnerable position, without altering his own stance, ranks higher. To finish the coronation, several English had to lean on Powhatan's shoulders to get him low enough to place the crown on his head, as he was a tall man. Afterwards, the English might have thought that Powhatan had submitted to King James, whereas Powhatan likely thought nothing of the sort. After John Smith became president of the colony, he sent a force under Captain Martin to occupy an island in Nansemond Territory and drive the inhabitants away. At the same time, he sent another force with Francis West to build a fort at the James River Falls. He purchased the nearby fortified Powhatan village from Powhatan for some copper and an English servant named Henry Spellman, who wrote a rare first-hand account of the Powhatan ways of life. Smith then renamed the village Nonsuch, and tried to get West's men to live in it. Both these attempts at settling beyond Jamestown soon failed, due to Powhatan resistance. Smith left Virginia for England in October 1609, never to return, because of an injury sustained in a gunpowder accident. Soon afterward, the English established a second fort, Fort Algernon, in Powhatan Territory. Anglo Powhattan Wars and Treaties. In November 1609, Captain John Ratcliffe was invited to O'Rourke's, Powhatan's new capital. After he had sailed up the Pamunkey River to trade there, a fight broke out between the colonists and the Powhatan. All of the English ashore were killed, including Ratcliffe, who was tortured by the women of the tribe. Those aboard the pinnace escaped and told the tale at Jamestown. During that next year, the tribe attacked and killed many Jamestown residents. The residents fought back but only killed 20. However, arrival at Jamestown of a new governor, Thomas West, 3rd Baron de la Warr, in June 1610 signaled the beginning of the First Anglo Powhatan War. A brief period of peace came only after the capture of Pocahontas, her baptism, and her marriage to tobacco planter John Rolfe in 1614. Within a few years both Powhatan and Pocahontas were dead. Powhatan died in Virginia, but Pocahontas died while in England. Meanwhile, the English settlers continued to encroach on Powhatan territory. After Rahunsonacor's death, his younger brother, Opie-Chapham, briefly became chief, followed by their younger brother Opie-Shonsenor. In 1622 and 1644 he attacked the English to force them from Powhatan territories. Both these attempts were met with strong reprisals from the English, ultimately resulting in the near destruction of the tribe. The Second Anglo-Powhatan War that followed the 1644 incident ended in 1646. After Royal Governor of Virginia William Berkeley's forces captured Opie-Shonsenor, thought to be between 90 and 100 years old. While a prisoner, Opie-Shonsenor was killed, shot in the back by a soldier assigned to guard him. He was succeeded as Wayrowans by Nekotawans, and later by Totopotamwa and by his daughter Cocacoesca. The Treaty of 1646 marked the effective dissolution of the United Confederacy, as white colonists were granted an exclusive enclave between the York and Blackwater rivers. This physically separated the Nansemons, Wyandots and Appomattox, who retreated southward. from the other Powhatan tribes then occupying the Middle Peninsula and Northern Neck, while the southern frontier demarcated in 1646 was respected for the remainder of the 17th century. The House of Burgesses lifted the northern one on September 1, 1649. Waves of new immigrants quickly flooded the peninsula region, then known as Chickacone, and restricted the dwindling tribes to lesser tracts of land that became some of the earliest Indian reservations. In 1665, the House of Burgesses passed stringent laws requiring the Powhatan to accept chiefs appointed by the governor. After the Treaty of Albany in 1684, the Powhatan Confederacy all but vanished. Capitals of the Powhatan people. The capital village of Powhatan was believed to be in the present-day Powhatan Hill section of the eastern part of Richmond, Virginia, or perhaps nearby in a location which became part of Tree Hill Farm. Another major center of the Confederacy about 75 miles to the east was called Werowocomoco. It was located near the north bank of the York River in present-day Gloucester County. Werowocomoco was described by the English colonists as only 15 miles as the crow flies from Jamestown, but also described as 25 miles downstream from present-day West Point, measurements which conflict with each other. In 2003, archaeologists initiated excavations at a site in Gloucester County that have revealed an extensive indigenous settlement from about 1200. Through the early contact period, work since then has added to their belief that this is the location of Werowocomoco. The site is on a farm bordering on Perton Bay of the York River, about 12 nautical miles from Jamestown. The more than 50 acres residential settlement extends up to 1,000 feet back from the river. In 2004, researchers excavated two curving ditches of 200 feet at the far edge, which were constructed about 1400 CE. In addition to extensive artifacts from hundreds of years of indigenous settlement, researchers have found a variety of trade goods related to the brief interaction of Native Americans and English in the early years of Jamestown. Around 1609, Wahunsun Aycock shifted his capital from Werowocomoco to Oraparks, located in a swamp at the head of the Chickahominy River, near the modern-day interchange of Interstate 64 and Interstate 295. Sometime between 1611 and 1614, he moved further north to Matchut, in present-day King William County on the north bank of the Pamunkey River, not far from where his brother Apishon Senor ruled one of the member tribes at Yortanand. Characteristics: the Powhatan lived east of the fall line in Tidewater, Virginia. They built their houses, called yahakans, by bending saplings and placing woven mats or bark over top of the saplings. They supported themselves primarily by growing crops, especially maize, but they also fished and hunted in the Great Forest in their area. Villages consisted of a number of related families organized in tribes led by a chief. They paid tribute to the paramount chief, Powhatan. According to research by the National Park Service, Powhatan men were warriors and hunters, while women were gardeners and gatherers. The English described the men, who ran and walked extensively through the woods in pursuit of enemies or game, as tall and lean and possessed of handsome physiques. The women were shorter, and were strong because of the hours they spent tending crops, pounding corn into meal, gathering nuts, and performing other domestic chores. When the men undertook extended hunts, the women went ahead of them to construct hunting camps. The Powhatan domestic economy depended on the labor of both sexes. All of Virginia's natives practiced agriculture. They periodically moved their villages from site to site. Villagers cleared the fields by felling, girdling, or firing trees at the base and then using fire to reduce the slash and stumps. A village became unusable as soil productivity gradually declined and local fish and game were depleted. The inhabitants then moved on. With every change in location, the people used fire to clear new land. They left more cleared land behind. The natives also used fire to maintain extensive areas of open game habitat throughout the East, later called barrens by European colonists. The Powhatan also had rich fishing grounds. Bison had migrated to this area by the early 15th century.